So let's see. This is our last meeting, and so this is your last chance to ask any questions about anything at all that we have talked about in the last months, as well as anything in any of the material on the website. So, here's Lorenzo. So it is a completely open discussion, and if you have no questions about any of it, then we'll just talk about what will be happening next. So, what do you say? Any questions or comments or discussion or whatever?
Yes, I have a long question, and I've also prepared questions or answers to your question that you've mailed a few days ago.
Good, good, thank you.
If I may start with the bigger one.
Yeah, go ahead.
What are your thoughts about games like RimWorld? Even the author of this game says that it's not a game, it's like a story engine. Because in his mind, even if you are a great player, how the game progresses is in a large portion not determined by your actions, how good of a player you are. And everything that he does, he tries to make the game tell a story, even by omitting some details in the characters and in the game mechanics. So the player can interpret the situations by their own accord. I know this is a different way of interactive storytelling, but what are your thoughts about this direction?
Well, I can make a statement with absolute confidence about this, and that is that I know nothing whatsoever about this game, and so I can't say anything. I can make a few general comments. First, every time you play a game, you generate a story. If you think of a game as a network of nodes, each node being an event. So this happens, and then there are various options that lead, and you choose this option, which takes you to this event, and you have more possibilities, and you take that option, which takes you to this event. If you trace the sequence of events, that sequence of events is a story, because a story is a sequence of causally related events. So yes, all games yield stories. It's just that most games yield really boring stories. I walked into the room. There was a monster right in front of me, so I shot the monster. Then I turned to the right, and there was a monster on my right, so I shot him too. And then I ran to the right as fast as I could, but a bomb went off behind me and blew me down. And then another monster appeared, and blah, blah, blah. It's, most games yield pretty dull stories. Now, the completely different approach is what we get with text adventures or interactive fiction. There, though, the network is a spatial network more than an event network. That is, you have rooms and you go from room to room, and then you have global variables, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, there are lots of people have been doing stories with some interactive elements for a long time. Basically, they've got a multimedia story. They want to tell you their little story, and along the way, you get to play some games or solve some puzzles, but you're going to get their story. My whole focus is on interactive storytelling. That is, are we talking about one story or many possible stories? Go ahead.
The general idea behind this game and similar games is that you have a gameplay portion of this software. In this case, you manage an outer world colony on some planet, and you have a few people that you can try to like boss them around and do stuff, but you don't have like a very direct control, and they have their internal states, their lives, their dislikes. The characters have relationships, and there are also encounters and different events that happened throughout the game that either directly or indirectly influence what is happening in this game. So in this sense, the software generates stories for the player to experience, and the player have quite substantial but still limited influence on what is happening, because sometimes, for example, even if you are a great player, your colony is overrun and you have a decision: either you restart or you just take what is left and go another place, like still continuing the game and try to rebuild in a new place on the same planet.
Well, how much variation is there in the stories? That is, do the players' actions somehow alter the dramatic developments in the story?
Yes, because it's, in a way, it's like you said, it's about people. In this instance, about the characters that you are trying to like create lives for them. So all the things that are happening like outside of the settlement and inside the settlement, all influence.
Very similar to Dwarf Fortress, if you're familiar with that, Chris.
Sorry, George?
RimWorld's really similar to Dwarf Fortress, if you're familiar with that game.
Yeah, yes, yes, it is. So the focus is about the characters and how they interact with each other, and at the same time, what the player interprets the characters are doing. So, for example, if there was an event and a wife and a husband had a fight or something happened to them, and then there is another point in the game that they have to like face a challenge together. Like naturally, we start as a players, we start to try to think what they are thinking, like how is it from their perspective that they have to now cooperate when their relationship was tested like an hour before.
Is this the correct title of the game? Oh, okay. What is it?
RimWorld. R-I-M.
RimWorld. Okay. Because I thought I might want to look it up.
Yeah. So my like general question was, what do you think about this type of creating stories for the player? Like the systems are creating the stories, they aren't like authored by the game designer directly.
Okay. Well, random event generation. Okay. Characters, mood meter, social relationships. Okay. Opinions. What's the personality model? Colonization. No, they don't say much about it. Oh, well.
I had a very similar question because I was reading this Swedish study on genders and the occupations they pick, and that certain people are attracted to objects and other people are attracted to people, and that can explain like why you become an engineer instead of a doctor.
Yeah.
for example. And I think that plays into this question a lot. Like RimWorld's very focused on the objects and these little characters interacting with the objects, where like the Storytron is just about the people, and like the props is a very, very small piece of it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how that factors. I had a very similar question at Cornell.
Well, just from the very little I can see, it does look to me to be sort of a souped up or an extension or a variation on the fantasy role-playing game with science fiction background instead of a swords and sorcery background. But again, the focus, unfortunately, they don't say anything here about the personality model or the nature of the relationships, which I consider to be the crucial issues. And certainly if it talks about combat and starvation, that doesn't strike me as promising material to work with. That looks more object, more focused on objects than on people. But again, not having seen the game, I really can't make any useful comments on it. But broader discussion of this general issue. Are fantasy role-playing games, I personally doubt that role-playing games will provide us with the avenue of evolutionary development. People have been talking about this for, oh God, 30 years now. I remember about 1990 having conversations with people about taking role-playing games and pushing them to greater personal development issues, character interaction issues. And that has not happened. And so I suspect this is one of those audience engineering things where if somebody really did build such a game, it would be rejected by the audience as not really an RPG. I don't know.
I saw this interview with the guy who made Diablo, and he was the lead programmer of NBA Jam. The name is escaping me, but he said he was trying to recreate the D&D experience, but he hated reading everything about the story world, hating building characters. All he liked was the artifacts and getting like he had like I don't remember what sword, like some iconic sword from D&D, and you could see the excitement in his face. So it's like I was thinking about like this object people distinction quite a bit this week. I think it's just different strokes for different folks.
Yeah,
but, I don't know.
Do you think
somebody?
do you hear me?
Yeah, Lorenzo?
Yeah, do you think we could relate this object-oriented video games paradigm, I don't know, to the fact that most of the developers are men, and that's maybe why
this Swedish study said 80% of men were attracted to objects and 80% of women were attracted to people in this very coarse
I've heard
survey
of a Swedish study about the social progressism, the fact that there is an equality between men and women in a country, and the related to the fact that women are more or less in STEM related engineers and science technology jobs. So they said that for example in the North European countries like Norway or Sweden, they have a high equality between men and women. Like for example, you have a paternity leave for like 6 months or something, and you have a lot of equality. And they have way more they have less women in STEM-related work. It's inversely proportional. The more equality you have, the less women you have in STEM. And they saw it in a lot of countries, like in India, where there is not a lot of equality. They have more women in tech, and it's inversely proportional. So in countries like America, where there's a lot of games that are made, you have a lot of action games and object-oriented games. And the more recent studios in Finland and Sweden, and where you have Rovio or the I don't know the name of all the mobile game publishers, but the guys who make well, you have more equality in terms of developers, and then so you have, well, yeah, we are speaking about the same stuff, George.
We can actually trace all of this back to a single concept. It's called sexual dimorphism. And this is the fact that among human beings, males are typically larger than females. And what this means is that if you think in terms of sexual relations, males achieve their sexual goals primarily through physical force, whereas females, being, I hate to use the phrase, the weaker sex, actually the smaller sex, you know, if the guy, you know, here we are, married couple, the guy has an affair, cheats on the wife isn't going to beat him up because she's smaller than he is, generally speaking. And so throughout most of human evolution, women had to rely on social support to have their rights defended. That is, a woman by herself couldn't say, God damn it, you promised me that you would give me some food and you didn't, so I'm going to beat you up. That never happened. On the other hand, men routinely beat up women if they're displeased with them. And so women's real support, the only way they can enforce their rights is by engaging the support of other people. And that requires social intelligence. Men don't need social intelligence. They've got muscles. And so we've got the way this breaks down is that women have more highly developed social intelligence than men. That means that women are more interested in how people think and feel and so forth, and men are less interested in that, which then divides down into men being interested in things and women being interested in people. And our games are always about things, not people. And that's why the whole emphasis in the games industry is on male developers, male customers, you know, men. And one way to look at it is to say, there's a huge market out there that's untapped, and I could get billions of dollars if I could tap this market. Well, unfortunately, doing so will require games that address social intelligence. That's what interactive storytelling is. And so ultimately, this will open up a new field. And this is why I also think that we're talking about a revolutionary process rather than an evolutionary one. That is, we're not going to take existing games and somehow expand them out to get social intelligence and then bring women in, because the men are going to try to hold the line at the current line of development. And so we have to simply start fresh with something completely new. And that's what will appeal to women. So, but again, interactive storytelling is very difficult. So
does that point us towards like getting on like a smartphone as the best platform to deploy the Storytron? Because I was reading like some of the other studies where it was the men versus women gamers studies that have been thrown around the Discord or got thrown around in the chat here that I read, was like the casual games, the mobile games, were bigger for the female demographic than the male
Well,
demographic.
yes, but that's, I mean, right now my wife is downstairs playing a word Scrabble kind of game on her iPad. The fact that women show more interest in the casual games, I don't think that allows us to conclude men. Whoop, here's Mark.
Oh no, I just think that's what the market is right now, though.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
They're on the phone, and the men might be on the console or PC.
Yep.
You know, give it to the people where they are. You know, sort of
Yes.
thinking
Well,
is where I'm going with it.
The wrong conclusion that some people in the industry make is that men like big complicated games and women like simple games. And then no, that's not the right conclusion. I think the conclusion we can draw from the marketing facts is that men are willing to really dive in and spend a lot of money and a lot of time on games. And so, yeah, they'll go for the complicated ones. But women are really just dipping their toes in the water. They're just kind of dabbling because there isn't really very much that interests them. So ultimately, when we start getting interactive storytelling, I think we will see some really big expansion in the female market.
Is she playing Scrabble versus her friends?
I think it's called Words with Friends.
Yeah, I played that.
So
yeah. So the idea to make storytelling, interactive storytelling games on mobile phones is quite complicated because it's been well 3 days. I just began to work in a French studio who publish mobile games. Mm-hmm. And so they use a lot. They make very, very simple games with no scenario, not even a lot of graphics. It's really simple gameplay. It's only like we could call it toys. It's like hyper casual games where you play 30 seconds. So they say that they have like 2,000 studios. They work with 2,000 studios in the world. They're the biggest publisher, and it's a time constraint. Like it's the thing we talked like several weeks ago about the authoring problem, where you have to, like you said, Mark, you have to write the story first, and this takes a lot of time. Yeah. And then you have to translate it if you want to put it on mobile for Chinese, English, French, Spanish, German, you know, like blah, blah, blah. And you can translate. There is automatical tools to translate simple words like score or you win, or, you know, simple things. But when you have, even if you have the best deep learning tools to translate, if it's like a book or like fine dialogue, you will have to correct it and you will have to spend time. And so that's why they are running away from stories, because it's too long.
Oh, but really? The localization is the reason, though?
No, it's the time to author the story plus the localization, because you have to take a lot of time. Like, for example, George, we were working on this board game, and we have to do like 3 minutes of dialogue, and we have to do it a bit interactive. So we have to write like 10 dialogues for only 3 people, and it takes like some time. And then
yeah,
you know, and then maybe it doesn't work, and then, you know, so the thing is, with gameplay you can see directly if it works or not, because the way to make money actually is to do like small videos, small ads, where you understand the gameplay in like 5 seconds. And if you have to understand a story, it's a no-go. So mobile is where you have the games, but it's a very peculiar kind of games, very object-oriented or toys-oriented. and it's maybe not, if even if someone is going to do this, if we arrive to do storytelling, it will be in a very small niche market, and maybe it's going to be on the PC, and people who want to spend money to play a text-based game, story game. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, other discussion points?
Deals
I found
and
myself. Oh, you can go.
go ahead, Mark. I've been talking.
This isn't really a question. Just I found myself last night starting on an essay on all of the thoughts about interactive storytelling and my own preferred way of doing things as a in comparison with the philosophies that we've been talking about in the class. I'm still organizing all my thoughts on that, but I don't really have any specific things to say about it. But it's just been really cool learning about all of your very specific outlook, Chris. It's been really enlightening. That wasn't a question. That was just something that I thought.
Okay. Well, let me talk about future stuff, although I'm not closing off the discussion, if you recall. Does anybody else have any other discussion points?
Just deals and nesting got,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, we brushed over it in the course, but we never deep dove. When I was going through the after deals, that was like, I was like, oh, that's kind of a gap in what we've talked about. But again, I cut somebody off again. I just step on people in these. The delay is just enough to get me.
Yeah, it's hard. In the past, I have dealt with deals with custom sentence structures where everything is just defined in advance. And that works. It's certainly easy. However, I am now convinced that a better approach is this recursive system with nested clauses. It's more complex. Shut up. It's more complex than the fixed system I used. But what I found was that with the fixed system, it was so easy to have little variations that you couldn't address with a fixed system. Whereas with a nested clause system, you have a great deal more flexibility, and you can say almost anything. Sadly, however, the primary lesson of Storytron is that level of complexity is simply not within our grasp. So this is something to note for the future. At some point in the future, when we really are doing some kinds of artificial languages with interactive storytelling, then keep in mind the idea of nested clauses and recursion of ideas. So, does that address your question adequately?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Okay, well, let me talk about the future. First thing, for now, what I'm concentrating on is shipping those boxes. I spent a good portion of yesterday just getting boxes and packing boxes and taping them shut and putting addresses on them and all of that stuff. And I decided to only take 5 of them down at a time because I can't carry more than 5. And so I shipped 5 of them yesterday. And if I can make it down to the post office today, I'll take another 5. And then I'll have a few more after that. But they're going out this week. The next task after that will be setting up the Thaddeus discussion group. Well, it already exists. It's really just a matter of getting all the invitations to you guys and having a pilot thread to say, all right, let's start talking about future activities specifically related to the encounter editor. there will also be the new conferences, which will start in October. I already told you that it will be done at 8 a.m. my time on the first Sunday, 12 noon my time on the second Tuesday. I'll send out an email with all of this. Let's see, 4 p.m. my time on the third Thursday, and 8 p.m. my time on the fourth Saturday of each month. This guarantees that wherever you are in the world, you can come to at least one and probably two of these meetings. Each month, though, we will have there will be a kind of a specific topic we'll be focusing on. Initially, this will all be about the encounter editor, although I expect that we will expand out into broader areas at some point. In the meantime, I have to get the encounter editor in better shape. I'm working on the demo story world right now. I also have to do the coding for the demonstration engine, and I expect to have all of this operational by October 1st. However, it will exist only in Java, which really isn't accessible to most people. Let me just do a quick head count here. Does everybody here have the ability to run a Java program, a Java app on their machine? Is there anybody who can't? Okay, good. I expect that most developers can do it. Oh, okay. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, Lorenzo. Let's see. So initially, it will just be Java, but very quickly thereafter, as soon as I finish the Java version, which should be fairly quickly, we will want to convert it over to JavaScript, and as part of that, we'll want to get it all up on GitHub. So there'll be a lot of work associated with that. And this is all going to be on a voluntary basis. Let me just do another quick head count here. On the problem of converting it to JavaScript, is there anybody in this group who, assuming this all looks interesting enough, would have both the time and the technical capability to convert from Java to JavaScript?
I've done it before, but I don't know. I don't like dealing with JavaScript either.
Yeah.
I happen to know both languages and have swam around in enough JavaScript to feel comfortable with it, and know Java well enough to feel comfortable with it. I might be a potential candidate.
Okay, well, again, you won't be able to make a decision until you see what we actually have. Let's...
Another thing I thought about in terms of deploying it would be picking a version, like everybody seemed to use Unity going into the class. Yeah. Either like a plugin or as like just like a default file, like they bring in a Unity file and then it's like, oh, the encounter editor is like there in Unity for them or something. And that
If you're thinking
has
of
the engine deploying for the multiple platforms, and a lot of the little things are done.
Yeah, Unity, it's very easy to export a HTML package in Unity that you can then embed into a web page. If you're thinking of having the web be the final distributor for it.
Again, that's going bottom up, recoding the whole thing, kind of.
Okay.
Yes, that's true. And I was even thinking about Unity as a possible like candidate to re-implement it. The issue is the things exported from Unity, because it's a 3D engine, it uses WebGL, and it doesn't really work on mobile. So especially if we intend to like reach a broader audience, then it seems that JavaScript, like pure JavaScript or with libraries, is possibly the best way. Like I'm not really a fan of JavaScript, but I think it's the most reachable technology.
Most universal.
Yeah.
If you can in general get your I think the bare minimum, if you could get it web compatible, I think that would make a huge difference to downloads. Yeah, if you look at things like Flash, like, you know, if you compare, like, you know, obviously it's going back a while, but like, you know, even nowadays, like the number of views that a Flash game gets compared to like a downloadable game, it's like still absolutely trumps. Yeah.
I have major reservations about using the Unity engine because it is at heart a 3D system, and that, you know, when you have a big enough hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so people are automatically going to start thinking in terms of 3D, and 3D is irrelevant to interactive storytelling. It's sort of like saying, yeah, sure, and we could use a really high-powered sports car to do interactive storytelling. And, well, I suppose so, but that's not what it was made for. And so I definitely want to avoid Unity, but I'm open, and I think JavaScript is our best route, but I'm not wedded to JavaScript. I agree, it can be very difficult. It's fine for little programs, but boy, once you start getting into something big, JavaScript can be a real pain. So
tough to find what's broken in it.
It might be worth looking at Ink as a point of reference, or Inky, as it's known by you know, people. That has a plugin for Unity, but can run as its own standalone piece of software, and, you know, people will export their kind of Ink files onto the browser, and you can kind of run that experience, you know, independent of Unity. Yeah.
Somebody suggested that I look closely at Ink, and I did, and I don't think that it is the best option for us, because it suffers from a smaller scale version of the Unity problem, where Unity is a big hammer for 3D graphics. Ink is a big hammer for textual, text adventure, interactive fiction stuff. And so it'd push you in that direction. And it's sort of like we're trying to define the personality of this medium. And we could end up being pushed in the wrong direction by using Ink. So,
oh, sorry,
yeah,
I should clarify. What I meant was, like, what they do is like a kind of a business model, in terms of that they have their own standalone version and they have plugins for other tools. Yeah, but to be fair, I am going to be, one of my mates, he works for Inkle, and I'm considering directing him to the course, because he obviously is quite interested in kind of narrative-based systems. So, yeah, you know, I just thought I'd mention that.
Okay. Somebody here suggested continuing meetings. I think I have a better proposal for you, and that is, as soon as we set up the discussion group on Thaddeus, that will be a text discussion group, but we could organize some sort of weekly meetings on Zoom through Thaddeus. That is, set up a date and time based on whatever people want. That would at least give you a larger base, including people whom you haven't met. I'd say the Thaddeus, there are probably about 20 or maybe, no, 30 people, I'd say, who are on Thaddeus right now. And this course will add another 10 to 15. So so I think we could get larger groups and more important, more varied groups, people from different I'd especially like to get my old friend Laura Mixon involved in this. She's a published science fiction writer, and she brings a very different point of view to these. This course has been dominated by what I'll, maybe I should say, reformed game designers. That is, games people who see there's a deficiency here and something needs to be done. And, you know, that's good, but I think it's very important to bring in people from completely different fields because they just have a very different point of view. Many times, Laura has caught me making on assumptions that really aren't necessary. Perhaps one of the things that I owe the most to her about is her, you know, changing the vocabulary, talking in terms of stages, props, actors, events, so forth, instead of XYZ coordinates and so forth. It's just a different style of thinking, and it's very valuable because we're going to have to get the best out of a number of different styles of thinking. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so let's see. That's the plan for the future. Any suggestions about it? Anything I've missed that you'd like to throw in?
Yeah, what I wanted to say that people here today in the Zoom meeting could just come back next week. Whatever we agree on Sadius, it's a bonus. If we succeed to do a Sadius meeting, to make, I don't know, a deal on Sadius to say we'll meet on Tuesday at this hour with everyone. Either or not we succeed by doing this, we do.
There's no reason why we can't do lots of different meetings. The only reservation I have is that you want to have critical mass. You want to have enough that you get a goodly number of people. And above all, I would emphasize variation. You know, we've all been talking to each other, and I think it'd be good for you to hear some different.
To open up,
Who are the other people who are in the forums? Are they people from the previous class, or are they just people who you connected through various means?
Let's see. There's this group. There's the Sunday class, about the same size, a little bigger. The existing Thaddeus group is people from all over, from many different situations. There's a fellow in Israel whom I met about 12 years ago. There's another fellow who changes his name every year, something I can never recognize. Whenever there's some strange name, I say, I'll bet that's so-and-so. I don't know which of his names is real. Let's see. That's more of a scattering of people from many different times and places.
Cool.
So.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
One last thing about Unity, you could do like 2D game or a text adventure game with Unity. It's just a framework, a tool that you could use to do many things. There's a lot of stuff you can't do in Unity, but you could do. I mean, we could use another engine like Godot. Godot is a open source software, a bit like Unity, but written in Python, I think.
Oh, okay.
And you could use C# and other stuff.
Does Godot have a JavaScript plugin?
Yeah, I think it has a JavaScript. Maybe it will be easier if we use. Maybe if Godot uses JavaScript, could do.
It's possible. But
if it's open source, we can fork it and just start deleting things.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't want 3D, just delete all the 3D. We don't want this, just delete
Yeah.
all of that, right?
Godot has a cool feature where you can be in play mode and change scripts. You know, in Unity, you keep everything, you do play, and it builds a small version. You can change soft stuff, but in Godot, you can change.
Just-in-time compiling.
Yeah.
Ah.
And that's cool.
Boy, when
That's something Unity doesn't have. And Godot is getting bigger and bigger each year. It's a very smaller base than Unity, but it's open source.
When just-in-time compiling hit around 1990 or so, it revolutionized everything. Until then, the way we worked, compiling a program could take 5 minutes. You know, you'd start compiling and then you say, okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom now. I'll come back. Is it done yet? No, it's not done. I'll go watch some TV or something. Nowadays, compilers are so much faster. So
yeah, but you lose the optimizations. It's like sometimes I've sped up these C++ fields. I mean, just by writing stupider code, like which isn't available in the just-in-time model. Like you got to be smarter. You can't go stupider and get a speed increase.
Yeah. Oh well. Nowadays, the computers are so ridiculously fast and has so much ridiculously much RAM. We don't care about any of that anymore. I'm so obsolete. I'm really good at squeezing it down and making it run faster and faster and faster. And that's useless now. So, okay then, well, I think we are done for now then. So the next things that will happen are, first, you will get an email from me announcing the Thaddeus thing and inviting you to join in, and then you'll be, you know, we'll have all sorts of interactions on Thaddeus, and then at some point you should receive, let me get one of these. There's somebody here. Oh, these are all, these, I just happened to, you'll receive a box like this containing the hat and the ball. So that's it.
I forgot about the ball.
Oh yeah. Yeah. See,
yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait.
And the hats, although I tested them and I discovered to my great dismay,
it doesn't bounce.
How much bounce? How much bounce? Yeah, is the big question with the Super Bowl.
Much. I have, you know, this is a real Super Bowl. It's about 20 or 30 years old. You would think it would have, you know, rotted by now. Yeah. But I did the standard test where I hold the two at the same height, drop them simultaneously, and then see how high they come. This is only about 80% of this.
So 20% less cancer in the new Super Bowl.
Yeah, maybe that's it. They do smell good. That, you know.
Yeah, maybe the 12 years old ball is made in America. That's why it's
freedom.
It's like bigger and bouncier.
Yeah, maybe so. But yeah, they just don't make them like they used to.
Yeah, the French guy over here doing American exceptionalism. I love it.
So.
Chris, I was just going to ask, obviously it's not particularly relevant to us, but if there was other people that we knew that were interested in doing the course, obviously before you had like the kind of the process of giving them your hours or whatever. Sorry, them giving you their hours. There we go, got it right. And then you know, scheduling a time. Like, are you scheduling another batch of lessons going forward, or like just curious to what the situation would be for kind of new students.
I'm not going to be teaching a course for a while because I've really got my hands full with this schedule of events coming up over the next 3 months. However, once that's all under reasonable control, Then I'm going to start up again, but first I have to redesign the course because I made some big mistakes with this course. I think I wasted some of your time, and I think I can make it shorter and more concise. And so I've got to rewrite a lot of those lessons and so forth. I will announce it through Thaddeus. And so that's going to be the central point where we can integrate all of our efforts. So there will be an announcement there, and if you know anybody who would be good for it, you can recommend that they contact me. Thaddeus is a closed discussion forum. I definitely want to preserve the idea of, look, we only want people who, know the basics of all of this. We don't want to have to go back over all of the crap I dragged you guys through. But
the
this
definitions,
yeah. So when I talk about events, props, actor, consequentiality, all of those concepts, you at least know what I'm talking about. And this does bring me to another point that I'd like to run by you guys. It is my intention that the conference meetings would be open only to members of Thaddeus, and Thaddeus is open only to people who have either gone through this course or whom I know to be, have some expertise. In other words, no beginners allowed. Is that fair? Do you guys approve of that? Do you think we should have a nomination system where somebody like Alex, the fellow you mentioned, where Alex, you could nominate him and say, I think he'll help the discussion. He has things to add, even though he's ignorant of some of the other things. What about a nomination system? I
think that's a good idea. Another example may be, this might be a bit too flexible, but in a regional networking group that I attend, they basically require like a prerequisite for you to join. So like, for example, in their case, it's have you been working on a game? Potentially in this case, it could be that you're like with Tom, my mate, he's, quite heavily involved in building Inc. And has been building narrative games for years. So, having some kind of like, either commendation from someone else or expertise. I suppose the only other thing is if you're trying to get this out to more people, obviously kind of gatekeeping it, obviously we'll kind of keep the conversation focused, but that does sacrifice a certain amount of discoverability.
Yeah,
I think though,
the stage needs to be gate kept, but the audience should not be gate kept. So if you're gatekeeping the stage, live streaming straight to YouTube or straight to Twitch, and even answering questions or something, which is posted in a chat or something like that, could get more people excited about this. Sorry for stepping on you, Mark.
Yeah, I actually really like that idea, because what I was going to bring up is having a gatekeeping system would actually be very complicated, because if the requirement is that you're working on a game, that excludes anyone who might be actually very beneficial to the discussion, who is not in the game design sphere, but is still interested in interactive storytelling, who, like your friend, might work as a science fiction writer, or who maybe they don't make games, but they make something else, and their unique perspective would benefit the discussion in some way.
Agreed.
Well, we could do it like, what was it? Something on the, I remember a movie about mafia thing where one guy vouches for another. And if the guy he vouches for turns out to be bad, the first guy sleeps with the fishes.
Yeah, I was going to say, who do they have to kill to get into Thaddeus then?
Yeah, I don't.
I don't know. I guess slaying a dragon would be on theme for you, Chris.
Yeah. Let's see what Lorenzo says here. I thought about making an online class like here. We could use some detailed feedback class during the We could do a Google form to ask UNA their ideas on how to improve things or propositions about Wiki. Okay. Well,
Yeah, I
again,
mean, like,
Thaddeus will be the place where we develop those ideas.
yeah.
So I expect Thaddeus is going to be a rather busy place.
Cool.
So
Yeah, cool. Okay. And I mean, yeah, like doing, like you send emails to us to give information about the class. You could send an email with a very small, like 3-5 questionnaire that everyone could answer. So you have some data to know how to improve your class. Maybe you did this in the past, I don't know, because I know in my class, I did 2 years class, a master, and the teachers at the end of the year ask us, so on this unit, what did you like, what you didn't like? And they took like 2 hours to answer every question and to take notes of what we wanted to say. We had one live discussion and one anonymous questionnaire, so you could say, I hate you, and not being,
let me ask a general question about your experience in this course. I'd like you to grade the amount of time in this course on a percentage basis of the total amount of time you spent in this course. What percentage of that time was discussions or material that you thought, boy, this is really good, I've learned a lot here? In the middle, what percentage was, well, it's okay, I learned a little? And then what percentage was really a waste of your time? Can you give me an idea of those three numbers? Definitely valuable, okay, and definitely a waste of time.
I wasn't even viewing the course like that, Chris, because I jumped in the course just thinking like, okay, this course is going to make me think about storytelling in games for however long it runs, and just having the meeting and having the reading, and then going and trying to put that into one of these systems. I mean, that's the whole reason I got here. So, it could have all been useless. It could have all been real interesting, and I would have gotten what I came here to get, which is just to be forced to think about this thing for a while.
Okay.
The material that may be on the verge of like feeling like it wasn't useful or a time waster, it may be not so much that it was a time waster, or at least in my own opinion, it's similar to what George is saying, is where all of the material in some sense is helping folks to shift their perspective on design. And I would say 99.99% of it was helpful in doing that. What might have been slow about it was the progression through those ideas. Maybe at some points, just 2 lessons wasn't enough to discuss on. Maybe more would have been enough to discuss on. Maybe 1 lesson wasn't enough for 1 week. Finding that balance might make the flow of the class feel a little better. In the parts where it maybe felt like it wasn't as useful to us or whatnot.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, since everyone is staking this question in their own way,
sure.
Then for me the first lessons were like a real eye-opener. I liked reading about the ideas you have, but in the first lesson they were presented in a more high-level abstract way, which I liked very much. The next set of lessons, they were interesting, but they were very in-depth with details, which I think I wasn't able to utilize. So they were a bit more like, okay, they were good to know if I were to start implementing them. And when we start doing more practical things, those lessons were of high importance to, for example, to make the prototype that I did. So the last part of the course was probably the most interesting because it was more engaging, more practical in a sense.
Yeah, going from systems to implementation was something that was probably missing the most. But hopefully next time you teach it, you'll have a handy encounter system to help with that implementation part, to actually show a story in progress in your hands that you can give to people. So that won't be missing.
Yeah. Other comments? It is my belief that the discussions of the Storytron technology were a waste of time and should be deleted from a future course. Would anybody care to disagree with that?
Which ones?
The
Because my gut feeling is disagreeing with that, because the Storytron gets me more excited than the encounter editor with the connected verbs. I was like, oh, that connected verbs, you know, gets my goat or whatever.
I would agree. There's much about Storytron that I would be more interested in learning, not in how the interface works, but in how all of the math works and the organizational, deeper layer aspects of it work. Because I feel like the interface itself has a hard time teaching or showing intuitively how that works.
Yeah.
And focusing on that rather than, I don't know, it's a really difficult problem.
Well, what if there were a separate course on the storytelling technology? That is, initially, it's just object versus process, the mathematics of doing it, and then proceeding to the encounter editor as the first simplest application of these ideas. And then later on, another course on the Storytron technology. Is that a better solution?
Well,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think
that progression.
Would it be possible to look at multiple ways of implementing story worlds?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there are many other ways.
I mean, from what I understand, you disagree with the majority of them.
Yeah, yeah.
But are there enough that you feel excited about to, instead of going deep into one, showing the strengths of several?
Well, I did that some years back with the second edition of my book on interactive storytelling.
Oh, okay.
And that was actually a very unpleasant exercise for me because, quite frankly, most of them fell far behind the Storytron technology in capability. For example, I think that interactive fiction is a waste of time. That it will, see, I view every technology in terms of, is it opening doors to the future? If we walk down the path this one has blazed for us, how much further will that path, can that path go? And most of the technologies I look at are sort of one-off in style. Beautiful example is Facade.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly 20 years old now, the world's first genuine interactive story world. I think it was definitely trailblazing, but it was also a dead end. The way it was built, I could tell, you know, there's no follow-up to this, no useful sequel that it can be imagined. And as such, this is not what we need. We need a technology that is evolvable, that points to the future. Storytron does that, but it's too big a jump. And so I see the
perhaps if I could play devil's advocate here.
By all means.
Yeah. I could be wrong in this, but it might be useful to know those dead ends.
Yes.
for the sake of knowing that they exist. It's like that mantra that goes, history repeats itself. If designers know what the dead ends are and know what has already been tried, that might lead to some other leap of inspiration of, oh, well, that dead end didn't work and that dead end didn't work, but maybe this alternate path of the variation of these two might work, or something like that. Maybe knowing about those different examples that didn't lead anywhere might lead to something else that's interesting.
I have a different view on that, which is that there should have been a reading list of 6 video games that we all played before we got in here. Because like in my initial conversations with Lorenzo, for example, I was mentioning games, he was mentioning games, and neither of us had any idea what we were talking about. And like I had to play Disco Elysium to know what Disco Elysium was like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If all of us had played these 6 games, then we could like point like, this game did it right, this game did it wrong, and we'd be on the same track there. Even if it's a dead end, at least we know what we're talking about, and we have this touch tone to talk about it.
The only caveat I would see with that is obviously that kind of links the inclusivity of the course to having access to those games. So if
it's for educational purposes, you're allowed to pirate them. So all the games would be free, so everyone would have access.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
It's true.
Okay, 6 games that exemplify dead ends.
That also might help with people in the discussion who might like, oh, but there's this other way, and I really like that way. If you discuss that other way and the pros and cons of it, maybe avoid having that discussion when talking about Storyton. And
yeah, I think that is a solid point. Okay, well,
like because it came up today with RimWorld. Like if we had all played RimWorld, or we had all played Dwarf Fortress, or another even simpler game of that style, then we could go right to that game and go, this is where they were right, this is where they were wrong. I don't know. I think that would
also,
be very
just on a practical level, it might not be necessary for all of us to play it. While that might be ideal, if we're talking something like Disco Elysium, where it's $30 on Steam right now, we could maybe have either Chris or some other willing participant point people to like game footage, or just talk about the game in a more like bare bones way, so that the system is clear.
Maybe game footage is the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perhaps. Well, actually, again, the best source for this would be the Thaddeus discussion. We could have a topic, please recommend some readily accessible games that clearly illustrate one of the dead ends in interactive storytelling. They approach this problem. For example, the most common mistake everyone makes is the branching tree. We're going to start off and you get 2 choices in each of those. People never understand the idea of the exponential explosion, and you're only 10 plies down and you got 1,000 leaves on the tree, and people never get that, and they just keep making that mistake over and over again. So maybe we could come up with a good example of an exponential tree design.
Disco does it right, Chris. They convince you they have an exponential tree when they don't. They just have the trunk. But you are totally, the writing in that game is so strong. You're totally convinced you have infinite choice, but there is no choice. Okay. It's really, I don't know how they did that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
One way to do that, there are a couple of ways. Again, I discussed these in my book. One way, I think I called it "Kill Them If They Stray." And the best example of that goes back to 1983 with the first Laserdisc game, Dragon's Lair.
Yeah.
Game. And that was a "Kill Them If They Stray." That is, there was the trunk, And then there were these options off on the side, but if you took any of the options that weren't on the trunk, you died. So you started all over again, and there was basically just one path to success.
But
that was a quarter harvester, though, right?
Yes, they wanted you to start over, but the basic strategy of we're not going to build a big tree. It's too much development time. We're going to build a trunk and then give you a few little side branches, but we'll break those off real quick. That basic strategy has been used many times, and it is a dead end because it only takes a little while before people realize that it's a fraud. You really don't have interaction. There's no free will, no real choice. I list a number of these in my book. You might want to look over the book if you can get easy access to it. Because it finally
I haven't bought the book
cheaper.
yet.
You know, they were charging through the nose for it at first, but
I self-publish it on Amazon.
well, you know, they're still selling it, so I don't want to undermine the publisher.
Okay, my bad.
So I did self-publish on the web my very first book. The first book on game design, called The Art of Computer Game Design, published in 1984. And believe it or not, it is not totally obsolete. There are still things in that are useful today, which, I don't know, is kind of a depressing thought.
It's a good thought.
But
it's a classic.
Yeah,
I had fun reading your Balance of Power book, Chris.
Oh,
it's a good thought.
Oh.
Yeah, I went through that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good thought that these old things still are relevant. The bad part is that it's like, right, we should be on the next thing, and we're not.
Yeah.
Still we're still waiting.
Yeah.
We're still waiting for the insight or the breakthrough or the flash of genius or whatever's required to do it.
And it all relies on 16-bit integer arithmetic.
Oh boy.
We couldn't afford floating point back then. So
yeah, what I wanted to say is I wrote it down because I would have forgot, but I wanted to say, like, my experience of the class is we began with 50% of theory, and then we had a breakthrough, I guess, and then we said, let's implement those ideas. So we had still talks about theory, but in between we had some exercise to do that some people did, some people didn't. It was up to you. So what I think is, in my experience of the class, it was the experience was split in two things. It was, for me, 100% theory on 1 hour a week with all of you, and then just after the class, most of the time we had discussions with George, and maybe Mark sometimes, and maybe Tom, and maybe Scott at the beginning of the class, where we talked and we said, what could we do? We want to exchange ideas and continue the class. And then it became, let's do a prototype, and what kind of games could we do? And then it began to do a game with only George and myself doing one prototype on Unity Collab and trying to make a game. And I learned a lot by doing those three things: the class, the discussions, and then making a small game. And I think it could be very cool to learn from what we did in this class. All the discussion we had a lot of talks on Discord by text, people saying, I think interactive story is like that. I think we should do this kind of personality model. I work on this prototype. And so, because in 1 year, when you do the class to another group of people, I think they might have exactly the same argumentation. So if we have a way, maybe on Sadius, to do a small wiki or something, so we have a trace of the thought process that we had and the kind of stuff you could do, it's like a little boost, a little time saved for the next ones. so they know how to do a class different. I mean, not
yeah,
the
just Mark and me have sent over 1,000 messages on
yeah.
each side,
Oh, yeah, we
arguing
were-
to each other.
There were times where we would butt heads for hours on stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's valuable information. I think because we are in a beginning of a new medium, I mean, maybe video games are old, but in a way they are very young. They're still in the nest, I guess. And so discussions is still important and made some progress. But I think the fact to do one class every week for like, I don't know, it's been 6 months. I don't know how much time we've been doing this. 4 months, maybe.
I think the
been a
encounter
while.
editor is the key here. We really need something that you can work with.
Yeah.
And I suspect that it will very rapidly develop. I mean, there will be lots of reactions along the lines of, ooh, we need to add this. And most of those will be very bad ideas, because most people try to pile on features when you really need to be subtracting. But I think having something to work with is the crucial thing that we need.
Yeah, whatever the tools, it is, the point is to implement ideas we learn in the class into a game made by students. So it's like when I did my previous class, well, my 2 years class, it was 10% of theory, 20% of exercise, and then 70% of projects with small groups. And it's like a class. It's cool. It's like you implement ideas by doing something with whatever tools you want. Maybe you'll use the ones you learn in class, but maybe you will find tools more adapted. And then that's how you progress and how you can implement your own ideas through the tools you learn and you got in the class. So it's a process of learning. And
yeah, I've learned Twine, Unity, and C# from the class through the implementation. I mean, that's crazy to me. For a 1 hour class, that's a lot.
I would say though, the class very much should focus on fundamentals before we do any implementation.
Yeah.
Or else people are going to make trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are you implementing? Yeah, if you don't have the theory, I mean,
10%.
People are implementing things all the time, right? Yeah. It's like you got to be implementing this interactive storytelling world.
Well, obviously, I have a great deal of work to do to get all the pieces of the puzzle coming together. But that's what I will be doing. I figure this is going to occupy me for the next 3 months. At some point, I would like to be able to return to my Arthurian design. But I have so many other demands on my time.
Well, it's good, because if it takes 25 years, Chris, then you become a centurion.
Well, yeah.
That'll be good. Yeah, you ain't dying before that. No, that fire is going to keep you burning.
Anyway, okay. So I will be seeing you guys on Thaddeus. It will certainly be done within, I'm hoping by the weekend. So. Okay then, well, lots of fun, and I will see you there.
Thank you again. Really
Great.
appreciate it.
Thanks for everything,
yeah,
Chris.
really love the class.
Thank you for the course.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.